that. Are you guys ready to talk about legislative updates? It's so exciting, right? So I'm going to do a little, I'm a teacher, by the way, and I'm going to do a little pre-test with you. I studied science in school, let's just be clear, not political science, so this was a stretch for me too. Do you guys know how legislative bills get their numbers?
Like, is it just when they file them? Yes. Like in order?
The order that they're filed in, right? So there are some, yeah, that is a scientific wondering. I didn't know, so I did what any normal person would do, and I Googled it. And so you probably already knew that. And we're up to some high numbers, and so what that means is there are a lot of bills. And for this legislative session that just ended, the 89th legislation, there were over 2,000 bills before the session even started that were filed. And I know Dr. Hetrick is a guru in this, so if I'm saying something wrong, correct me. The passing rate for this legislative session was the lowest. It was only 13.8% passing rate of those 2,000 something bills. We're really grateful in education because a lot of them had to do with education. Usually the passing rate for legislation is about 20%, so we're a little bit lower. And then anytime there's a special session, the numbers start over. So you're going to see me talk today about big numbers and little numbers, and maybe it gives you a clue about when they were introduced, and then if there's a special session behind it. So for us, there were over 100 bills passed just for public education alone. And so as you can imagine, we are still swimming through some of that. We're still waiting for some guidance from TEA. We're still waiting for some guidance with the legislation to identify what it is that we're really supposed to be doing. And so a lot of uncertainty. TEA is still working out some things, but we're going to talk about some things that possibly impact you if you have a student in our district or if you're a community member. So raise your hand if you have a student in our district, just so that pretty much everybody. Okay, perfect. Here's just a few, this is available online at TEA, a few of the bills and where they are in their cycle of implementation. And if you notice, over here on the side, we still have a lot of 2026 still yet to be determined. So these are laws that have passed, but there's nothing for us to do yet. We're kind of waiting. We're in limbo. So that you might have a question for me, and I might look at you with a weird look, like, I don't know that yet. It's like administering the STAR test. If you have a question about the STAR test, all I can say is just do the best you can, because that's what we're doing as public educators. I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Rao, and he is going to talk about the funding bills. I'm glad I don't have to do that.
So one thing, that I was thinking of when Dr. Kidd was going over this is House Bill 2, that's one bill, but there's so much stuff to it, so not every bill is just a one-off. Like in this case here, House Bill 2, there was about $8.5 billion in new funding for this biennium that was allocated out to school districts. One of the main things is our basic allotment increased by about $55. $61.60 is what our old basic allotment was, and that was established, I think, with House Bill 3 in 2019's legislative session. That was, I guess, due in some part to try to combat inflation that districts have to deal with, just like everybody else. And so increasing the basic allotment $55, our new one is now $6,215. We've also added some additional allotments to help, which you see $106 for enrolled student. That's a little bit different from our basic allotment. The basic allotment is based on average daily attendance, whereas the 106 is based on the number of students enrolled with the district. That one can only be used for specific costs, and you can see a list here of transportation, health insurance, employee benefits, and so forth. That was really the legislative session's answer to inflation, some high insurance costs that have happened, fuel costs, things like that. Utilities. And I want to say in our district, the increase that we've gotten on that 106 was just enough to cover what we pay in property insurance for the year. There are some other small allotments and adjustments, special ed evaluations. We're still unsure how we're supposed to report that data to get that allotment. There's some college prep career readiness and certification on exam reimbursements. These other small allotments, we're still trying to seek some guidance from TEA on how to report that so that we can get that funding into the district. A big portion of this is what we call pass-through funding, but there was a teacher retention allotment. And you can see up here that for teachers from 0 to 2 years of experience, they didn't address that. So the district used some of the additional funding that we got from the increase in the basic allotment and the $106 per enrolled student to try to address compensation for the 0 to 2 year teachers. Teachers that have 3 to 4 years experience you're looking at $2,500, and then 5+ years it's $5,000. So essentially, that money is just a flow through to the district. It doesn't give us additional funding. You're just increasing the compensation for teachers that fall in those years of experience by that amount of money.
Will that continue every year? Like now we have new rates, or is it just?
I can tell you with certainty that it will continue next year.
Okay.
The legislatures, yeah, they meet every 2 years, and so at some point.
So they only wrote it for like this year and next year?
But they're not getting another 2,500.
That's correct. It's 2,500, and then it's not an additional 2,500. So if they were at 50,000, and now they're at 52.5, next year it's still 52.5, unless the district does something to do a raise on that.
And that's really just the base teacher pay that the state sets.
Yes.
Not what the district, like, because this district may already be certain.
Yeah, so the state has what's called a state minimum salary schedule, and so no matter where you're teaching at in the state of Texas, you're going to make at least a certain amount. In dripping, we pay over that. Now the 2,500 is just a flat amount, and so like Elaine was saying, we're not getting, it's not 2,500 this year plus another. They've essentially now added 2,500 on top of what we pay. And so in essence, our salary schedule has now grown by 2,500 for those teachers and 5,000 for 5 years or more teachers.
But you could maybe have to decrease it. The state.
I mean, I don't see that we would,
Okay.
how would you do that?
I know, my point is unfunded mandates possibly in the future.
Now some of y'all, I know Elaine remembers this, but at one point in time, many years ago, we used to get a certain allocation for health insurance. And then that was, every year, we got that same amount. Then the state cut it back, and then eventually the state got rid of it, but they redid the funding formulas, and it was supposed to be all wrapped in together. So, this could, down the road, just all get wiped up into the big pot and reallocated out, but things change every 2 years. Legislatures meet, and so at least with certainty I can tell you that we'll get funding again next year. After that, we'll have to see. And so the support staff retention allotment was an effort to get pay raises to those employees that were not teachers and not administrators. And so there you can see in the bullet, it's $45 per ADA, and again, that's average daily attendance. And then it's supposed to fund salary increases for non-administrative staff. You can see teachers not eligible for the teacher retention allotment. So there are some teachers, I guess, that are not classroom teachers. They're considered instructional coaches. That's where their salary increase would come from this additional allotment.
45 per what?
Per average daily attendance.
So what does the staff get?
Well, that's the funding that comes in, and so when you look at how many students we have in the district and what our attendance percentage is, then we get $45 per that amount. So that may bring in, I'm just throwing a number out, that may bring in $500,000. So then you have to look at all this other group of folks that are non-teachers, non-administrators, and then try to determine how you divvy up that $500,000.
It's not like the prior, where it's per
Correct.
teacher.
Correct, and that's a good point. The teacher retention allotment, that's $2,500 per teacher. This is, it creates a pot of money, and then we have to, you know, through the budget process and raises and trying to figure out how much, you know, the district can afford. That's where we divvy that out.
Do you have any idea what the ballpark number would be? Like $1,000 per?
I know that this past year, when, you know, after we looked at all the revenue coming in, taking into consideration all the new funding elements, that we were able to give, it was a 3% on the midpoint raise. And so everybody that's in a certain category, there's a minimum salary amount, there's a maximum, and there's a midpoint. So if that midpoint was $20 at 3%, that person got $600. Now, this affects all of us here. This first bullet, Senate Bill 4, it's going to increase the school district's residents' homestead exemption from $100,000 to $140,000. If you haven't voted, today's voting day. I early voted, so I'm okay. But this helps save taxpayers money. The difference in the savings on tax dollars is supposed to be offset by increased state contribution. And then Senate Bill 23, it increases the homestead exemption for those that are 65 or older or disabled. And again, you can see on both those bullets, it requires voter approval of a constitutional amendment. And so if you haven't voted, today's the last day. And then lastly, under Senate Bill 2, this creates an education savings account. I think you're probably used to it, called vouchers. It limits the total funding to $1 billion in the first biennium. The education savings accounts, they start with the 2026-27 school year, so that's next year. And participating families can receive $11,000 to $12,000 for a K through 12 student attending a private school. Adds up to $30,000 annually for students with disabilities, and it caps homeschool funding at $2,000 per student. And then the awards will be distributed on a needs-based lottery system until the $1 billion is fully spent. And that was my part. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I did say that I'm a teacher, and if I was going to grade myself on this presentation, because we look at certain things when we're going in classrooms, so look at engagement, are you guys up and talking, I would fail. Because I'm standing behind a podium and y'all are sitting there staring at me. So I want this to be really conversational, okay? So if I say an acronym that you don't understand, or if I go too fast or we want to dive in a little bit, just let's talk, okay? That's what I really want to talk about. So here we go. So the accountability, House Bill 8, so that has a low number, and that one just recently passed. In fact, it's so new that I just got more. They send out to the administrator address letters. This was just October 23rd about this and about another thing coming up, the state test. So we'll go dig into that a little bit more. So as these things roll out, we get these administrator address letters, and then we have to look through that. We look at board policy, we look at what TASB's recommending. There's a lot of behind the scenes work to make sure that we're staying aligned. So there is going to be an A through F refresh in 27, 28. And some of those rules that the commissioner of TEA, Texas Education Agency, has to follow is they need to publish to us 2 years in advance what that looks like. So we're expecting that soon because 2 years would be right now. So we're curious about some of those refresh items. In my department, we have Daniel Brown. He was working for TEA, so he has a lot of kind of insider information that he's been feeding us and staying on top of it. So as things come out, we're able to just navigate a little sooner than other districts. Speaking of the assessment, remember the STAR test was supposed to like be reinvented, go away, right? No, you know what? Do y'all know what happened?
That's more tests.
Yes, we're gonna do more tests. Right now, we have to test every 3rd through 8th grader in reading and math. And then there's some sprinkled in science and social studies for those. And then every high school student has to pass 5 EOCs in order to graduate. 5 EOC is end of course. So it's an Algebra 1, Biology, US History, and English 1 and English 2.
And what's it currently? Did that number decrease? How many EOCs need to be
No,
passed?
it helps a little bit with EOCs, but that's in a couple of years. So here's what they did. The problem with assessments, and you probably know this because you're a parent, or maybe you have experience in the classroom, those tests happen in late spring, April, May-ish. And it's a one and done test. Those kids go off to summer. We get the scores weeks later, maybe sometimes even a month later. And it's dead data, meaning it was just kind of an autopsy about how our students learned the previous year. So we start our new year, and it's a whole different cohort of kids, and so we don't have actionable data. We have a little bit that we can use, but one data point's not going to change a whole lot for our students. So what they're proposing is we're going to do a beginning of the year test in all of those subjects except EOCs. So 3rd through 8th, math and reading. Then we have science in 5th grade. We have science and social studies in 8th grade. So that's a lot of testing. So they're going to have a September test. They're going to have a January and February test middle of the year. So you'll sometimes hear it be called BOI, beginning of the year, MOI, middle of the year. And then there's also a EOI, end of year. And not only that, this cracks me up. They added a 4th test that's kind of buried in here just for writing. So that's multiple options for students, which is great from an educator standpoint. Like, yes, let's see them. Let's see we have actionable data, we think. But something that's spinning in my mind is we do these things called scope and sequence, or year at a glance. So we have our curriculum kind of outlined. This is what we're going to study this first 9 weeks. Here's our units, here's our sequence, and here's our why. And then we go to the second 9 weeks. If we're doing these kind of, I don't even know what they're going to be called. It's going to be called SST, and I have to look and see what Student Success Tool. So STAR is going to be no more. It's going to be SST. I'm sure they'll come up with some kind of word.
Like say y'all haven't come up with a name for that.
We're going to take this test. But I don't know. I can't figure out, especially if there's other things that we're looking at for increasing teacher pay. That beginning of the year test is September. What curriculum? What's the content? Do I need to prepare students for that test, or is it just kind of like what we do currently as our MAP test? It's more of a nationally normed test. There's really no curriculum that aligns to it. You align your curriculum to what your results are or what the student needs. So there's a lot of questions I have. Are we going to, as a state, be on the same year at a glance, the same scope and sequence? I don't know.
I don't know either.
I don't know. They don't know either. You're right.
So here's my question. So I'm all for like, why, I just kept saying like, why won't you just use MAP? It's norm reference through the nation instead of a criterion reference test, which they just make up crap and norm it to whatever they want to. So are we going to do MAP still in addition? I mean, I like the MAP data a lot better, and I also like that you have to reach a ceiling before it cancels out and really, treat you right at your level. But I'm like, now we're gonna double, because for MAP we do EOY, BOY.
Right, we do. And so I think once we see how this is going to roll out, we might need to make some other decisions. And we always, which I love our district because we make our decisions for kids, not because it's, you know, an adult-driven decision. So if MAP doesn't serve our needs anymore because the state has something, I was hoping it would be MAP 2, and be like, done. Because that is transferable across the nation. And we can say, how does Dripping Springs ISD compare to other really high affluent
Yeah,
other
it compares
districts?
within the district, within the nation, you know, I just, now we're gonna have this made-up data that they're gonna tweak on whatever.
That's on
Like,
our
she needs-
standards, right, our Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, which, you already know this, there's a lot to cover. There is not a single way we can cover every single thing with fidelity, rigor, all the things that we're looking for in every content area and make it through the school year. I think there was one study that said you had to go to school until you were 21 or 22 just to make it through the curriculum. So lots of questions around this test. They have a little bit to figure this out. They're going to have groups studying it and building it and all of that, but as a curriculum person, I'm just sitting here going, I don't know what this is going to look like. So for this year, 25, 26, still STAR. For next year, 26, 27, still STAR. And then 27, 28, it's we're going to, and we will evaluate what that looks like. I don't want to assess our students, overly assess them, but I do want to provide our teachers with enough information to guide their instruction to meet the needs of our kids, because we are needing to differentiate, right? So more to come on that. The one good thing that
Sorry, one question. What, the transferring over of the assessment program, what's the basis of that, and what's the downside? Upside?
For SBOE to hand it over to.
Oh, I don't really know. I didn't even know who owned it, actually. I thought it was always in the hands of TEA, but I was wrong.
I mean, SBOE is elected and TEA is appointed, so that's the difference in anything that's owned by SBOE versus TEA, is that voters get to choose who's on the state board, technically.
So it's now a appointed body that's running the assessment program?
No, it's going to TEA, which is that commissioner's
Mike
appointed.
Moran.
That's governor appointed.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's
Yeah,
going
it's
to an
moving
appointed
to
body
that.
versus.
Correct.
And it's already, I don't know the number, maybe Elaine, what the amount of money we're spending just for the one, well, I say one test, there's a lot of tests in there, but just for our one time a year test, it's in the billions. I can't imagine what this is gonna cost our state. I wonder that too, I don't know, I can't
It's
answer.
going to be extremely expensive.
I would think that, yes, I would think that, so.
And nobody wants it. So the whole thing was, you know, we do have to test kids, we do need to have a way. And when we went into this legislative session, parents were angry and really trying to get rid of STAR, so they did the switcheroo.
Like, we got rid of STAR, but we got now
Yeah.
with more tests. There are some good things that are happening. I'm curious as an educator, what does that actually look like in the classroom? Because we know the people that are making these rules probably don't have very much experience in the classroom. They definitely don't have very much experience in the classroom after 2020. So they're going to find a way this year. So there are 4 things that are going to happen this year for students on the STAR test. They said we can now test on a Monday. That's not ever a good idea. They're going to increase the, well, I'm going to say this the wrong way. They're going to increase the mitigation for test anxiety. So they're going to figure out a way to make kids less anxious about STAR.
Yay! Oh,
I
so
like
STAR's
that.
going away.
I'm not sure about what that looks like. I can't wait. And then they're required to give us notification of results within 2 days.
Okay, now this is a plus.
That is a plus, for sure.
But we're the writing. I
The
mean,
writing, yes,
I don't
and
know
the
how
writing.
that'll turn out.
And then they did say that in 27, 28, when ST is a real thing, that English 2 is going away.
Yeah.
So if you have a junior, a sophomore or junior right now, they still have to pass the English 2, but in 2 years, that's going away. Interesting. I don't know the why.
Right?
You didn't put the hours, but wasn't it like each test is an hour and a half or something?
Well, right now, currently, you could take up to 4 hours, and then there's extended time.
Well, I think with these, like,
Yes,
it
it is
ended up
shortened.
adding hours.
They're
compared to
shortening the
what-
test, and I feel like through what I just read, they're making it more like MAP, where it's going to be adaptive to the student for the BOI and the MOI. And then they said that.
Good morning, Dripping Springs High School. Today is Tuesday, November 4th, and today is a B-Day. Students, your reminder that all Design
are
Club
still
will be
gonna
hosting
criteria,
architects
not
from
adapted.
BLK Architects, who
we
will
have to
be
mitigate
who
that
have been
as well.
designing the new high
What
school.
does that actually
Come
look
hear
like?
them on Wednesday from 4:25 to
Are y'all ready
5:10
to
in
move
room
on?
J103. Flyers are posted around the school with more info.
10 Commandments, House
As we
Bill
continue
10.
school
Because
psychologists
of the
back to
number,
today, school
this was on
psychologists work with
somebody's
teachers
mind
and families
early
to
on,
create
right?
safe, healthy, and supportive learning environments for
The
all
10 Commandments,
students.
we don't
Hey
have
Tigers,
this
in your
reality right
class
now
with
because
Canvas
we are
page, there is a
specifically
link to a
named
Google
in a
form for you to
lawsuit,
fill out
so
and nominate
there's
a
a
teacher or staff
moratorium.
member
We are doing
for a
nothing, but
staff superlative.
here's the parameters
The
around
form
that.
will close this
It's hard to
Friday,
talk
November
about.
7th. Then we will
Just
send
like
out
that.
another form for voting. The winner will be featured in this year's yearbook.
Is the district.
Students, please check your skyward to look at your attendance for the second 6 weeks of
We don't
school.
know.
We will
It's that
not
eighth
be able to
free
make
freshman
changes to
waiting.
attendance after this Friday, November 7th.
Yeah.
If you have any outstanding notes, doctors, dentists, college visits, etc., that will excuse your absence, please turn them in no later
She's
than
talking
Friday.
about absences.
Thanks,
I'm glad
Tigers, and
that's
have a
what
great day.
Okay, so we don't have this currently in our classrooms yet because we were named, as it says right here, we were named in this lawsuit. But here's the parameters. It has to be 16 by 20. It has to be the King James Bible transition. And the way we're watching other districts carry this out is they are putting it in a place in their classrooms and saying, don't move it. Because teachers are creative. We are very creative and we will put things over it. They're having to come
It
up
has
with
to be
rules like that.
funded by donations.
It has to be
Yes.
funded by donations too. Some districts are getting more than one donation, so they're having multiple copies and I don't know what they're doing with that.
In God We Trust is, you only have to display one. Does that
I think we have
stipulate
some-
like just one? A
Just
number?
one in the front of the building,
Okay.
yeah. Those aren't in the
So
class.
this was kind of an oopsie in this law that they didn't write like a number. Okay.
I don't know. And I try to think of some of these, not this next one, but some of these, you know how you have warning labels on your coffee that says caution, hot coffee, and if you buy a new appliance, it'll tell you all the things not to do, like don't use it in the bathtub. It's because somebody probably did that, right?
Right.
I look at legislation the same way.
Yeah.
Some of this is really good, like, okay, yes. Some of it for us in our district, we're like, yeah, no, we've always been doing this. So it's just kind of interesting how this all works out. So they are now coding students that are chronically absent, so that means not present in classrooms more than 10% of the time in the whole school year. They're coded at risk. Do y'all know what at risk means? There's a little waiting for state comp ed that comes with anybody coded at risk. I think there's 14, I think now there's 15 criteria to be coded at risk. And if you finished out that sentence, it would be at risk for dropping out of high school. And so with that, we code students based on some certain criteria the state provides us. Did they not pass STAR? And if they didn't pass STAR, the next year they need to pass by 110%. If they're not ready for an early reading indicator, early math indicator for young, pre-K to second grade, they can be at risk. If they are incarcerated, their parents are incarcerated, they're homeless, there's a lot of things that can make you at risk. And now chronic absenteeism, if you're not present in school, you're not learning, therefore you have the potential to be at risk of dropping out. So they added that. We still have the rules around what that looks like in the coding and when do we code. So working with families, if we don't know where a student is, so there are certain things that would exempt them and we wouldn't put them on this list. So if they have medical need to be out, we're not going to code them at risk. We work at the families. We have different avenues and measures to get the student where they need to be and not code them. But if we don't know, if they're walking towards that truancy line, then they're going to be coded at risk and the family's notified. This, I think you just heard there are certain absences. This is in our handbook, yes.
That's all fine and dandy, that coding kids. Was there any discussion about taking care of the root causes?
Yes. I'm glad you brought that up. That is really important for us as a district and our superintendent. She is really a proponent for making sure we are identifying the root cause, sitting down at the table and having conversations about what's the barrier to coming to school, how can we help, and making sure that we're working with families and kids to make sure that's not an issue for them. So yes, I'm glad you brought that up.
So that's our district.
That's what?
That's our district.
Yeah.
2 days a month.
But what about the state? I mean, you know, they passed this that says measure it. Are they doing anything to help deal with these kids?
A lot of I can't speak for other districts, but I've heard that there's, they try to work with the families and they'll go to truancy court fast and like get there. I know truancy courts are different depending on your community. We work with ours to say we need to see what we've done. We can't just go straight from 0 to 100. There are districts that will go straight to truancy court. They actually have truancy officers that's their whole job.
Especially in Dallas.
But really, when I said they, I should have been specific.
Oh, okay. Yes.
The legislature,
Oh, okay.
did they do anything to help with at-risk kids?
I guess in a roundabout way, we do get a little bit of funding for state comp ed because we are supposed to, as a district, as a school system, mitigate for any student that would be at risk, whether it's homeless, providing extra support for a homeless student, whether they're in foster care. So there are some other tools, or tutoring if they did not yet pass STAR. So yes, we have a little bit of funding that is our at-risk money that we use for supporting students in need.
But the irony is they took off the minimum spend requirement
Yes.
for at-risk.
So do you want to talk about that?
Yes,
Somebody wants to talk about that.
What'd you call it? Minimum
Spend requirement?
Spend.
So for all the special populations, we do get weighted funding. Earlier when I was telling you the basic allotment is $61.60. If you're at risk, there's an additional weight, and we get funding based on those weights. TEA has always required that you have to spend a certain percentage of that additional funding directly for the at-risk population or the special ed population and so forth. But TEA removed that spending requirement on this added weight. So we still will spend it for those, but we just don't have to abide by this additional requirement that TEA has.
Okay. We'll move on to, there are certain absences that are just excused, and so they added this one, which is any student that has mental health appointments now is an excused absence, just like a medical appointment. Here's an interesting one coming up. This was yet to be determined from the state. TEA is going to be standardizing across the state of Texas in public schools our GPA calculations and the ranking and weighting of our courses. So certain things that they're looking at, and I don't know what this looks like. I don't know what graduating class it applies to, but this is for our dual credit, AP, on-ramps, and then on-level. The state is going to tell us how we can weight those courses. Right now, we weight them according to EIC local, which is a board policy. We have 15 extra points, 10 extra points. It kind of flows in that way. So we're kind of watching this and waiting for more guidance about what this looks like, the impact to kids, and once we understand it, we'll get some word out to families. I would think that anytime you mess with somebody's grade point average, you have to do it when they're still in middle school so they can prepare and plan. But I don't know how the state's going to respond to this. We just don't know. So this is one we're watching closely to see where we are with that.
And that one's more to like make a standardized way across the state that we're waiting so we don't have too much inflation with GPAs depending on district.
So I can imagine that UT and the colleges will adjust based on that as well, because right now we're top 10%. I think there's going to be a little ripple, but we don't know what that ripple is yet. Okay, GPA calculations on college applications, and this is something I can say our district and our Director of Counseling and Health Services, Retta Airy, has been on top of, and so this is like, duh, state. I shouldn't say that, but they're saying we're going to have this system called My Texas Future that is a one-stop shop for students to explore careers and to do college applications and do all the reference letters. Well, guess what? We've had one for several years called Schoolings. So this is also going to be an option. It's free, students sign up, but we are still going to be using Schoolings unless they tell us we can't. Our students and our families are already very familiar with that Schoolings app, and it starts in 7th grade. We're actually bringing it down to even elementary this year. So the state is getting on board that students do need a one-stop shop or a portal. This talks right to the Texas Higher Education Board. So we're going to see how Schoolings does the same thing this does, and we're going to keep weighing that out. But we're ahead of the game here thanks to just our forward-thinking directors. Any questions about that? Oh, parent rights. We have a class in here too, so I'll try to be a little soft. So parent rights. If you didn't know this already, you have rights as a parent. I think it's important that the legislation, Senate Bill 12, decided to tell us that we have rights as parents, which is fine. So you have the right to your student records. I don't know if that's changed. They've just included some things. So now you have right to your medical records, which is kind of ironic because you give them to us. But you also have rights to your library records. And so in my next slide, I'll show you what we have put together. In the past, you could always see what has been in our libraries. This is a portal where you actually see what your student has checked out. And then you, as the parent, are in control of deciding what your student can and cannot check out. So you are in the driver's seat. We can't even change a student account to say no. We have to work with you because you have the portal to do it. So I don't know if you've ever called we call them flies, your librarian to say, I'd like to restrict books about whatever, dinosaurs. And they have to say, okay, log in, here's what you have to do because we're doing that. So there's some other things, anything that we're changing. Did you get the actionally Senate Bill 12? Okay, that's because of this. So you have to know what kind of services we're offering at school, whether it's medical or mental health. So that was really clear as mud. I know we sent that out, and then a couple days later, more guidance from TEA came out. So it was fun. It was fun to navigate that, but I think we're in a good spot with that. Inside our parent hub, which is another slide, we have this Destiny portal. Have y'all ever been in your student's Destiny portal? So after today, I'm going to expect your homework is to go in there and follow this little login. Make sure we can do it, because if you can't, then send me an email so I can talk to Ms. Tillin and say it doesn't work. But this provides you an opportunity to see what your students checked out. And actually, if we checked out a Chromebook, you can see anything checked out to your student. It's a really good tool. Here's where this lives. So if you go to families, it's Parent Resource Hub, and then it looks like this, and it's down here, Destiny Portal. It'll walk you through, it's a click sheet on how to get to that. You might want to tell your friends too. It's under. So they did require a lot of consent from parents to do a lot of different things. So there's a long laundry list. Some of those things are like the student clubs at the high school. You had to give your consent for that or your denial of that. And we're not, any psychological or psychiatric tests, we've already been doing that for some time. Making an audio or video recording needs consent. That we can still record as long as there's an educational need, but we just can't publish anything. So it could be for us internal, but if we're publishing, we have to get your permission. Very much like when you do the enrollment form, you give permission for photos, very much like that. Healthcare services or other medical procedures, that's where that came out. You might be getting calls from nurses if there's some confusion about what they can and cannot do with your students. Instructional information, so we have, and I think we put on our website, it's TEA's form. So the legislation says you're either going to use a form, you're going to send a notice to a parent, or you're going to get consent from the parent. That's how I summarize Senate Bill 12. It's all about making sure your parents are informed. So on our website, on that resource hub I just showed you, there is a link to TEA's forms that goes through every right that a parent has in school. And I can't remember how many pages, it's multiple pages. Lots of good reading there too.
Did they provide any funding? Because like with Actionally, y'all have to pay for that, right?
I don't know if I can say this on recording, but Actionally has a great partnership with us.
Okay.
So that is not a cost right now that we have to worry about. But we had to get creative in a tool that was simplified to get that parental consent quickly and that we can keep track of in a seamless way. So Actionally was our solution, and it's working beautifully. So this. Instructional materials, there is a whole list of things that go with Senate Bill 12 and 13. They kind of go together with the instructional materials because 13 is all about the libraries, the SLAC, which is the School Library Advisory Committee. We did elect to have a SLAC, so we have community members that are part of our curating process. They're looking at our books and they're making recommendations for purchase to our board. So we have a SLAC member here, actually. We also have this new requirement that every teacher has to have a plan or a syllabus available to the parents. And that we use Canvas for a lot of times, so that's your one-stop shop for that. If you need an additional copy, you'll just reach out to your teacher. We all know about 1481, the personal communication devices. Basically, anything that is a cell phone or a computer, anything that can do digital communication. And so our solution to that was we had enough Chromebooks. We had students stop bringing their computers. We just did a one-to-one delivery. At first, we were a little worried about how that would go. And I just want to tell you, I go to a lot of campuses. It's beautiful. And at campus at one, you actually see students talking together. I don't feel like it's a barrier. There's a few hiccups sometimes, but I think our kids are so compliant and they're so adorable. They're actually playing like Uno at lunch and chess, right? So it's really, I feel like it's a huge win for us. There are some exceptions that we're allowed for. They have disability. And then here's our implementation, basically bell to bell. When you walk into our buildings, we like to put away, you heard the announcement, remind students. It's a good reminder. We allow our students to have them on them, but just turned off and put away. Some districts are saying you can't bring them to school, some are putting them in pouches. We did not do that. We set them away. Any questions about cell phones? Consequences?
Can we now email our child on their student email account?
It depends what level they're at. High school, yes. Middle school, no.
Okay.
Elementary, no. So if there's something that you need from your student, or you need us to know, I would go through the front office, teacher. Our kids are really smart. I'm just going to say that. There. If they are caught with a device, we're giving a lot of chances since this is new. Parents have to come pick it up. That's been somewhat painful. But we're not seeing a lot of recurring issues. So I think it's working. If you're hearing differently, please let me know. Be curious. Oh, any questions? That was it. I thought I had another one, but no, that's it. Any questions or bills I didn't cover that you're hoping to cover? Anything that was new to you? Oh, here's a QR code. So our next Taxpayer Tuesday is going to be December 2nd. It's going to be titled Money Matters, because it really does. And then here's a QR code. If you want, there's a lot of bills. We just highlighted some that impact us. If you're interested in other ones that maybe you've heard about, that QR code will take you to a website called Leap Forward. It's actually the legislative, they took all the bills and they put it all in this easy to find format, except you're gonna need like a magnifying glass to read it, but it's hyperlinked, so you can go to the actual bill, which is kind of nice. So then if you look at the right-hand column, it'll tell you where we are in it and who's involved. Is it the team we're waiting on TDA? Is it a local education agency, or is it the campus? So it's kind of helpful. It's a lot though. Just warning you, it's a lot. So if you have more information that you need from other bills, you can go to that resource.
That's just education bills, right? Not like.
Yes, it's just education bills. Yes. I don't know where you get the rest of the story. I really don't. But
You're like, that's enough to focus
that's
on.
enough. There's a lot. It's multiple pages and really fine print. But any questions for me?